Hello, it's Ryan from 2minutetennis.net, and in this video, we're going to use Alexander Dolgopolov's technique to give you 5 ways to hit a much faster serve. Now be sure to stick around to the end when I go in front of the camera and show you each in detail, all 5 tips in detail. And a big thank you to Essential Tennis for allowing me to use this video. Make sure you subscribe to their channel. Their link is in the description below. So tip number 1, and by the way, make sure that you film yourself so you can see how many of these tips you're using. Tip number 1, get the tossing arm up slightly before the hitting arm. And you can see this. He's got his arms coming up at a similar time. So his racket is coming up at a similar time as the ball. But it's just that he's leading with the ball. When you lead with the ball and the ball is up here and the racket's still here, all of a sudden the ball's in the air and your brain says, holy geez, we got to get this racket around in time. So all of a sudden when you toss the ball earlier than the racket coming up, it creates the environment for racket speed. You see a lot of recreational players, they bring their racket up first. If you bring your racket up first, it's going to have to slow down to wait for the ball to go up in the air. So toss slightly ahead of your racket. It'll give you the environment for racket speed. You'll have to go fast. It's like being late to work. You got to drive fast to get there on time. It's the same idea. Now, the second thing has to do with his toss and his toss height. He is very reminiscent of a Roscoe Tanner serve where he's swinging while the ball's going up and then hits it very close to the peak. Notice how low his toss is. Not only is the ball going up first in the first tip, where the ball's going up and before the racket, but now he's giving himself very little time to swing, which is what you want. You don't want a lot of time to swing. You want very little time to swing if you're looking for a way to increase your racket speed. That's going to create the environment where you have to swing fast just to make sure that you get the ball before it drops too low. So first tip was get the ball up before the racket. Second tip is toss so low that you have no choice but to swing really fast. Is it possible to toss too low? Absolutely. Just like it's possible to toss too high. I would just encourage you to toss a little lower and keep seeing, keep practicing how low you can toss that ball to still get full extension. You'll notice he's fully extended way off the court. It's amazing how high he's reaching and how much explosion he gets. But toss lower in your serve and you'll notice how much faster you have to move the racket. The third tip has to do with his legs. Let's zoom in here. Notice when we begin, we cannot see his left leg. And as he starts to go down, he coils. Watch this. He's bending his knees. Now, all of a sudden, his left thigh is visible. When you release the ball, as you're releasing the ball, you should be going down with your body. So look at this. He releases the ball. Now his body's going down. We can actually use the top of the net as a way of marking where his head is. Now, when he releases the ball, watch how his head goes down. So he gets a ton of knee bend. But he's not just going down. He's also like a corkscrew coiling. So he's coiling away from his target. Here we can see his back. And then when he goes down, we really can't see his back anymore. Why? Because he's turned his back to his opponent. And that is what actually exposes his left thigh and his left knee to the camera as he goes down. We want to bend as the ball comes out of our hand. So the ball goes up and we bend, but we also want to turn away from our target. Now, when the racket gets above our head in the trophy position, that's when we want to come back up. But now we have that stored energy from the corkscrew and we're going to unwind. If we take that yellow line again and we put it, let me redraw that. There we go. We draw that at the very bottom of his knee bend. Now when the racket is above his head, now his head starts to creep up above that line again. So this is such a cool thing. His racket is going to draw this line. So watch his racket follow that line. Now, here's the neat thing. This is the top of that rainbow, if you will, right? The racket goes up and then comes back down. Watch how his head goes down to that yellow line on the way up. And then as the racket begins dropping, his head comes back up above the yellow line again. So watch. His head goes down to that yellow line as the racket goes up to the red circle. And now his racket is leaving the red circle and his head's popping back up again. That's the timing of the knee bend. You go down, racket's at the trophy position above your head, then your head pops up again. That's the way to maximize the leg use and the leg timing. It creates an incredible shoulder stretch. Your body's driving up as the racket's going down, really swings the racket around. It's unreal. So don't just bend your knees. Make sure you corkscrew away, but also have the proper timing of the leg drive. The next thing I want to show you, it's a little hard from this angle, but you'll get the hang of it here. I want to stop right here and zoom in. Do you know what let me circle it. You know what that is right there? That's his left hand. He is tucking his tossing arm against his body. It's almost like his arm is broken and he's in a cast and his arm is in a sling. Like the doctor gave Dolgopolov a sling to rest his arm in. When you are serving, what's important with the body rotation, because, we talked about how much his body is rotating. Look how we can see slightly the front of his shirt right here. There's something written on it. And then as he drives up, now his chest starts facing forward and we're looking at his back now. Well, when you are rotating, it's in your best interest as you're rotating up toward the serve, and you can see his leading with the elbow, right? So his elbow is leading forward. When you're making that move, it's in your best interest, if you want to really accelerate the racket, to slow your body's rotation down. When you slow your body's rotation down, it accelerates the racket. You don't want to just keep rotating. You don't want that. You want to rotate initially, but then you want to stop that rotation, and that actually accelerates the racket much faster. And so you actually want to tuck that left arm in, tuck the tossing arm in against your body. And it's a really cool thing that we actually see his left hand pop, out of the right side of his body there as a way of showing that his body does slow down. You can see that his body is no longer rotating as fast as it was. So his body's rotating fast and then it stops rotating. It's very obvious that his body is slowing down the rotation, and that's actually what accelerates the racket. And then the last tip is, because of the continental grip, I want you to focus on your serve on leading with the edge. You can see right now his strings are facing off to the left, and then when he's done hitting, right there, we can see his strings are facing off to the right. So there's 180 degrees of movement when it comes to supination, right? So he's supinated right now, not supination, but supinated. So his racket's supinated, or his arm is, and now his racket is, and his forearm, he has pronated. So his racket is facing off to the left, and his racket's is facing off to the right. That's the move you want to make sure you're using on your serve. Now, he has a very common finish where the back leg kicks up. You can see his left hand is reaching toward the camera. That's usually what people copy with the tossing arm, and they don't actually tuck it against the body. That's the really important thing that you want. You can see his back foot's up on the toe for balance. That's because he's leaning in on the serve. But you use these 5 tips. I'm so excited to show you this. You're going to improve your serve. All right, let's check out the full analysis. Now, to practice these 5 tips, you don't have to go to a tennis court. You can literally do this at your house. So film yourself, and you can work through each idea individually, and then you can start stacking them on each other to get the full picture. So the first idea is that you're going to have the tossing arm come up first. I watch so many beginning and intermediate players where their racket comes up first, and that means your racket's going to have to slow down to time with the ball. Watch the pros. They lead with the tossing arm before they bring the racket up. Now, is it possible to delay the racket too long and then be too rushed? Of course. So think of it as your arms come up at a similar time, but you're going to lead with the tossing arm. That creates the environment where the racket has to speed up. It's almost like leaving your house late for work and then having to go pretty fast, and you don't have time to stop for coffee because you got to get there in time. The second idea then would be to lower the toss. So this really works well with leading with the tossing arm. Not only will your racket feel like it's got to speed up if the tossing arm goes up first, but if you lower your toss, it'll give you even less time to then swing, and that's actually a good thing. See, a lot of players think that the higher they toss, the more time they have to hit the ball. It's actually the reverse. The higher you toss, the less time you have to hit the ball. You'll have a lot of time to swing, which isn't a good thing, right? But you'll have very little time to hit the ball, because if you toss super high, the ball falls down through the window of opportunity so quickly that it's hard to time. When you toss lower, what you'll do is you'll give yourself very little time to swing, which means you got to go fast, but you'll actually hit a more stationary ball, which means you actually have a lot of time to hit because the ball kind of sits there in the window of opportunity and you actually hit more of a stationary ball. So lead with the tossing arm is number one, toss lower is number two. Number three has to do with bending your knees. So a lot of players, when they bend straight down. It was cool to see Dolgopolov, when he released the ball, all of a sudden his body starts turning. So here you can see my chest, but here you can see my back. So when you bend, you want to bend down and turn your back slightly to your opponent. Now here's the way you want to think of this, and you've seen me probably in the past use the birthday hat idea. You can put a birthday hat on to time this really well. You know, the type of racket path I teach is a racket path that would hit a birthday hat. And by the way, you don't want to put the birthday hat back here. This is where a lot of coaches make a mistake in the idea of the birthday hat, because they're like, oh, when you bend back, then you won't necessarily hit the birthday hat. The birthday hat should be in the front. So think of it as like a unicorn horn, right? It's going to be in the front of your head. And when you make that move where you're bending your knees and you're turning your back to your opponent, that's when the racket's coming up to the birthday hat. Well, when you get to the birthday hat, that's when you'll start to come up again. And so you hit it and you'll go up to the birthday hat with your body going down, and then when you get to the birthday hat, that's when your body explodes up. So watch it from the back here. My body's going down as my body rotates actually toward the camera because I'm serving that way. And then when I get to the birthday hat, that's when my body starts exploding up again. Really important that you're exploding up at the right time. What I usually see when I scroll Instagram and Facebook, and you'll see people who post videos of their strokes, and what you'll see is that their racket goes all the way down here by the time they start exploding up. That's not going to maximize the shoulder stretch and that whip around. You want to explode up when the racket is above your head. The next idea, number four, is to stop the body's rotation, or we'll say slow it down as you get to the ball so that you can accelerate the racket. So it looks like this. It's tucking that tossing arm in against the body. So we've led with the tossing arm, we've tossed lower, we're rotating our body, and then as we explode up when we hit the birthday hat, we're gonna bring this tossing arm down in front of us and then in. And when we rotate and we block the body with this reactive brake, it accelerates the hitting arm. We don't want to be rotating as we hit the ball. That's not going to help us serve our fastest. What you see the pros do is tuck their tossing arm in against the body. Look at Roddick hit a serve. He doesn't throw this arm back while he's hitting. Look at Dominic Thiem. He doesn't throw his arm back while he's hitting. That's a misnomer. You want to bring this arm in, let that arm, the hitting arm, accelerate, then it can go back. The going back like this, if you're copying this from the pros, you're kind of copying the wrong thing. Right? You're copying what is least important about the tossing arm. What you want that's most important is bringing that arm in against the body. The reactive brake slows the body's rotation and accelerates the hitting arm. And last, it's to make sure that as you're hitting, your racket is on edge just prior and on edge just after. Meaning you could take a coin and balance it on the edge and then balance it on the edge when you're done. That pronation as you're hitting is the fastest way you can move the racket through contact. So lead and film yourself. Lead with the tossing arm. Toss lower to force yourself to swing fast and to keep your racket moving. When you are releasing the ball, begin bending your knees, but also rotating away from your target. And then when you get your racket to the birthday hat, to hit the birthday hat, that's when your body is going to then explode up and start rotating. As you're rotating, bring that tossing arm in against your body. That will slow your body's rotation down. And then last, let the racket go on edge to on edge on the finish. You use those 5 tips to help you serve faster. There's no doubt you're going to gain confidence, win more matches, and play much better tennis. This is Ryan Reedy from 2minutetennis.net. You got this.